Commodus. Born in AD 161, the Roman emperor from 180 to 192, succeeding his father Marcus Aurelius, a significant departure from his predecessor's philosophic and austere rule. Unlike Marcus Aurelius, who is remembered as one of the last of the 5 good emperors, Commodus's reign is often noted for its autocratic and, frankly, erratic nature. His administration showed early promise, but it quickly descended into scandal and corruption, heavily influenced by his capricious behavior and preference for gladiatorial combat, where he often participated personally, believing himself to be the reincarnation of Hercules. This obsession with the arena not only drained the imperial treasury, but also alienated the Roman political class and military, eventually leading to a decline in both his popularity and the stability of his regime. Hello and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, good to meet you. Are you coming back? Good to see you again, friend. Well, today we have an interesting one, all about that mad Emperor Commodus. Plenty to learn. Oh, and if you want to support the channel, before I forget, well, you do enough of that supporting by just enjoying the content. As long as you like it, I'm happy. But a click on the like and a click on the subscribe helps as well. That lets YouTube know that you want more people to see the content. Add that little grain to the long beach of sand. Further to that, go and check out the links in the description. And now, let's all get nice and relaxed. Back to ancient Rome tonight, shall we? Commodus, born in August of 161 AD, in a little town called Lanuvium, somewhat near Rome, the son of the great reigning Emperor Marcus Aurelius, no doubt you've heard of him, and Faustina the Younger, daughter of Emperor Antoninus Pius. Commodus's birth came shortly after his grandfather's death. He had an elder twin, too, Titus Aurelius Fulvus Antoninus, who actually died in 165. Commodus was made Caesar quite quickly, October 12th, 166, in fact, along with his younger brother, Marcus Annius Verus, who also died in 169 after a failed surgery. Of course, the failure rates for surgery in those days were quite high, to say the least. But this left Commodus as the sole surviving son of the great Emperor Marcus Aurelius. No doubt you know that he was the author of Meditations, right? If you haven't read that one, well, maybe that's your homework. Now, under the care of his father's physician, Galen, Commodus was treated for various common ailments throughout his youth. Nothing too serious, but a few little hiccups here and there. In regards to his education, that was of course robust. I mean, you don't get a poor education when your father is Marcus Aurelius, surely. A series of tutors, Onesicrates, Antistius Capella, and Pitholeus, among a few others, primarily focused on his intellectual development. Now in 172, during the time of the great Marcomannic Wars, Commodus was at Carnuntum, the military headquarters of his father. It was there on October 15th, 172, that he was awarded the victory title of Germanicus in front of his troops, following his father's triumph over the Marcomanni. Commodus's entry into the College of Pontiffs in January of 175 marked the beginning of his formal public life and career. Now, in that same year, the month of April 175, the governor of Syria, Avidius Cassius, proclaimed himself emperor based on false rumors of Marcus Aurelius's death, jumping in his grave very quickly. Not a very good friend, our Cassius, but he actually secured support from Syria, Palestine, and Egypt, and continued his rebellion even after it was clear that Marcus was still alive. Of course, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, and, well, once you've committed, you may as well just keep going. Let's see how it works out for him. Well, amidst all these turbulent events, our young Commodus, stationed on the Danubian front, formally entered adulthood by assuming his toga virilus on July the 7th, 175. However, before Marcus and Commodus could launch a campaign against Cassius, somebody finished the job for them. In fact, Cassius was murdered by one of his own centurions, which certainly seems to be the fashion for Roman leaders. Keep your enemies close, but not that close. Well, following these events, Commodus joined his father on an extensive tour of the eastern provinces, which included quite a notable visit to Antioch in the region of Syria. The imperial journey continued on to Athens, Greece, where both were initiated into the Eleusinian mysteries, a significant religious experience. The pair returned to Rome in autumn of 176, after a successful and influential expedition. Now, a little more about Marcus Aurelius, notable for being the first emperor since Vespasian to have a legitimate biological son, had been part of a succession of rulers known as the 5 good emperors, who were characterized by the practice of adopting their successors. On November 27th, 176, Marcus formally granted Commodus the title of Imperator, a moment often regarded by contemporary historians as the start of his reign, despite some uncertainty about specific timelines of his official elevation. By June 177, Commodus was proclaimed Augustus, effectively co-emperor, and was unique as the first emperor born in the purple, as they say, during his father's reign. Now, the end of 176 saw a significant joint triumph celebrated by Marcus Aurelius and Commodus on December the 23rd, commemorating their victories and shared rule. On January the 1st, 177, at the young age of 15, Commodus already held the consulship, making him the youngest to assume the role, traditionally reserved for men around 30. But hey, it helps to have a very powerful dad, right? Don't worry, I'm sure he's a good judge of character. Well, that same year, he got married. Brutia Crispina, that was her name, and he returned with his father to the Danubian front. Unfortunately, 3 years later, March 17th, 180, Marcus Aurelius passed away in the Danube region, and he left Commodus, then just 18 years old, as the sole emperor, ushering in a new and ultimately tumultuous era for the Roman Empire. But None of us were really making very wise decisions at the age of 18, so let's give him a little bit of credit at the start. Well, the start of his reign was actually filled with better decisions than the latter half of it, but, well, we'll get to all of that. Well, upon becoming emperor, Commodus immediately initiated significant economic changes, notably devaluing the Roman currency. He decreased the denarius's weight from 96 per Roman pound to 105 per Roman pound, reducing its silver purity from 79% to 76%. Now, this adjustment lowered the silver weight in each coin from 2.57 grams to 2.34. By 186, he further debased the currency, bringing the purity down to 74%, and the silver weight to 2.22 grams for each coin, amounting to 108 denarii per Roman pound. This devaluation was the most substantial since Nero's reign, marking a significant economic shift. Tough times ahead, we may say. Well, his reign, in stark contrast to his father Marcus Aurelius, was marked by almost continuous warfare. Of course, Marcus Aurelius was famously a lover, not a fighter, and, well, it saw relatively fewer military engagements, of course, but it was riddled with political turmoil and the emperor's erratic behavior that Commodus would become famous for. Historian Cassius Dio remarked that Commodus's ascent signified a decline, I quote, from a kingdom of gold to one of iron and rust. And that's a 1-star review from Mr. Cassius Dio, indicating a period of degradation and corruption. Well, despite the critical events of his reign, detailed accounts of Commodus's rule are relatively sparse. The main sources include Herodian, Cassius Dio, who we just mentioned, who offers a contemporary glimpse, though only in fragments. We also have the Historia Augusta, which is often considered unreliable, unfortunately, due to its blend of factual and fictional content. Now, Commodus spent little time with the Danube armies, quickly negotiating peace with the local tribes before returning to Rome to celebrate a triumph on October the 22nd, 180. It became pretty apparent that he was completely disinterested in administrative duties. He frequently delegated state responsibilities to a series of favored aides, starting with Sauterus, his chamberlain and a freedman from Nicomedia. The emperor's detachment from governance and his preference for delegating led to unrest and several plots against him, necessitating his eventual direct intervention in state affairs, which he handled in an increasingly authoritarian manner. Despite alienating the senatorial class, who grew to despise and fear him, Commodus maintained popularity among the army and common people. His popularity was partly due to his generous distributions of money and his participation in lavish and spectacular gladiatorial games, where he often fought in staged combats that, of course, ensured his victory. While to finance his costly entertainment and gifts, Commodus imposed heavy taxes on the senatorial order, and provocatively altered many inscriptions to read Populus Senatusque Romanus, the people and senate of Rome. You always see that SPQR, well, that's kind of what it is. It's the same thing. Anyway, this reversing the traditional order to emphasize his populist approach, because you see it would usually be senatusque populus Romanus, but this time it's populus senatusque, so the people, then the Senate. The Senate did not like this very much, I'm sure you can imagine. Now, this era under Commodus witnessed a marked decline in Rome's economy, and also administrative effectiveness, setting the stage for further instability. He had become an emperor at the age of 18, and his circle of advisors was inherited from his father, including Tiberius Claudius Pompeianus, who was married to his sister Lucilla, and Gaius Bruttius Praesens, his father-in-law. Other key figures included Titus Fundanius Vitrasius Pollio and Aufidius Victorinus, the prefect of the city of Rome. Commodus's 4 sisters, each married to equally influential men, were integral members of the court, with Lucilla, over a decade his senior, and previously married to Lucius Verus, holding the rank of Augusta. The stability of his reign was first tested in 182, when Lucilla, reportedly envious of Commodus's wife, Empress Crispina, orchestrated an assassination attempt. Although her husband, Pompeianus, was uninvolved, 2 men believed to be her lovers attempted to kill Commodus at a theatre, but they failed and were subsequently executed. Better luck next time. Lucilla, well, she was exiled to Capri and later executed as well, while Pompeianus shrank away and withdrew from public life, absconding into the countryside. The conspiracy also implicated one of the Praetorian prefects, that being Publius Tarentinius Paternus, although his involvement was only later discovered well after the fact. His colleague, Sextus Tigius Perennius, managed to arrange the murder of Sauterus, Commodus's disliked chamberlain, positioning himself to gain further power by implicating Paternus in another conspiracy supposedly led by Publius Salvius Julianus, a senator engaged to Paternus's daughter. This led to further executions within the senatorial and consular ranks, including Salvius and Paternus. Didius Julianus, a relative and future emperor, was removed from his position as governor of Germania Inferior. Following these events and the assassination of Sauterus, Perennius assumed control over the administration, and Commodus appointed a new favorite and chamberlain, Cleander, a Phrygian freedman who had orchestrated Sauterius's murder and was married to one of the emperor's mistresses, Demostratia. Amidst these threats to his life, Commodus increasingly retreated from Rome, spending considerable time at the family estates in Lanuvium, indulging in his interests, such as sports like horse racing, chariot racing, and combat with both beasts and men, which he would of course sometimes showcase publicly. In 183 AD, Commodus was finally inaugurated as consul, appointing Aufidius Victorinus as his colleague, and adopted the title Pius. That same year, conflicts escalated in Dacia, where notable military commanders Clodius Albinus and Pescennius Niger, both future contenders for the throne, achieved significant distinctions. Concurrently, In Britain in 184 AD, Governor Ulpius Marcellus extended the Roman frontier back to the Antonine Wall. However, his stringent discipline provoked a revolt among the legionaries, who declared their support for another legate, Priscus, as emperor. But Priscus was not keen on the title at all, and he declined it, leading to the dismissal of all legionary legates in Britain by Perennis, Commodus's powerful advisor. During the Capitoline Games, on October 15th, 184, a cynic philosopher openly accused Perennis of treachery, and right in front of Commodus, no doubt. Well, his allegations deemed false led to his immediate execution. Cassius Dio described Perennis as a capable yet harsh administrator, noted for his ruthless ambition, but not personal corruption. The tension escalated further in 185 AD, when soldiers previously stationed in Britain transferred to Italy to combat local brigands, accused Perennis of plotting to install his own son as emperor. This accusation, facilitated by Cleander, another of Commodus's favorites aiming to eliminate his rival, led Commodus to authorize the execution of Perennis, along with his wife and even his children. Monstrous, I know. Well, the aftermath saw a purge within the empire's ranks. Aufidius Victorinus took his own life amid the turmoil, and Ulpius Marcellus was replaced by Pertinax as governor of Britain. Marcellus was subsequently tried for treason in Rome, and he escaped execution, but barely. Cleander, seizing substantial control within the Roman government, began exploiting his position by selling prestigious posts, including senate seats, military commands, governorships, and even consulships to those willing to pay the highest price. His greed and corruption led to widespread instability, marked by the increased desertions within the military ranks across Gaul and Germany. Pescennius Niger, one of Commodus's generals, was tasked with suppressing these deserters through a military campaign in Gaul, while revolts in Brittany were quelled by legions transferred from Britain. In 187, a significant threat emerged when Maternus, a leader among the deserters, plotted to assassinate Commodus during the festival of the great goddess in March. The plot, however, was foiled when Maternus was betrayed, and then he got executed as well. Busy week for the executioner, it seems. Well, the same year, Pertinax uncovered a conspiracy against Cleander led by Antistius Burrus and Arrius Antoninus, both adversaries within the political sphere. As dangers mounted, Commodus increasingly withdrew from public life, preferring the safety of his private estates. By early 188 AD, Cleander solidified his grip on power by dismissing the then Praetorian Prefect Attilius Abantianus and assuming the supreme command of the Praetorian Guard with the unprecedented rank of Pugione, or dagger bearer. Sounds pretty ominous, doesn't it? Effectively placing the Praetorian prefects under his direct command. Cleander's manipulation peaked in 190, a year marked by his appointment of an astonishing 25 suffect consuls, setting a record in the annals of the Roman consulship. Among these appointees was actually the future Emperor Septimius Severus. The year 190 also brought a severe food crisis to Rome, which the prefect responsible for the grain supply, Papirius Dionysius, blamed on Cleander's mismanagement. The crisis culminated in public unrest during a horse race at the Circus Maximus in late June, when Cleander dispatched the Praetorian Guard to quell the disturbances. Pertinax, now the city prefect of Rome, countered by sending vigiles urbanis to oppose them. Facing imminent danger, Cleander sought refuge with Emperor Commodus at Laurentum, but was pursued by an enraged mob. Under pressure from his mistress Marcia, Commodus ordered Cleander's execution, along with that of his son, effectively ending Cleander's reign of influence. The purge also claimed the lives of several key political figures, including Julius Julianus, the Praetorian prefect, Commodus's cousin Annia Fundania Faustina, and his brother-in-law Mamertinus, and the implicated Papirius Dionysius, The names are sometimes difficult, give me a break. Now, following these events, Commodus took a more active role in governance, but continued to rely heavily on a small circle comprising Marcia, his new chamberlain Eclectus, and new Praetorian prefect called Quintus Aemilius Laetus. Well, better Laetus than never, I suppose. It was at this time that Commodus increasingly embraced the persona of Hercules, emphasizing his divine status and distancing himself somewhat from his lineage to Marcus Aurelius. And thus, he was portrayed as a Herculean figure across the empire, highlighting his physical prowess and a semi-divine nature. This portrayal was intended to align him with Jupiter, Rome's chief deity, by emphasizing his role as Hercules' son. His self-presentation escalated into megalomania as he sought to reshape the Roman Empire in his image. The year 191 AD saw significant devastation in Rome due to a fire that lasted several days, destroying key structures such as the Temple of Pax, the Temple of Vesta, and parts of the imperial palace. And Commodus used this disaster as a pretext for profound transformations in 192 AD, symbolically refounding Rome and even renaming it Colonia Lucia Annia Commodiana, akin to a new beginning under his rule. This renaming extended to the months of the year, each now reflecting one of his 12 names: Lucius, Aelius, Aurelius, Commodus, Augustus, Herculeus, Romanus, Expurgatorius, Amazonius, Invictus, Felix, and Pius. Further emphasizing this transformation, he renamed the Roman legions, the grain fleet from Africa as well, and even the Senate. The populace, his palace, and all Roman society were branded with the Commodus name, like some kind of deranged graffiti artist. Well, the day these changes were decreed was actually celebrated as Dies Commodianus, marking a new era completely centered on himself. But that wasn't far enough for him. He also replaced the head of the Colossus of Nero near the Colosseum with his own likeness, and then he gave it a club and a bronze lion at its feet, transforming it into Hercules Romanus. An inscription proclaimed his unique conquests in the arena, boasting of his victories as a left-handed fighter against 12 times 1,000 men. Citation needed, further solidifying his crafted image of invincibility and divine sanction. And so, in November of 192, he indulged in his passion for spectacle and personal glory by hosting the plebeian games. He began each day of the games by hunting and killing hundreds of animals using arrows and javelins, showcasing his prowess as a marksman. Each afternoon, he would put on his armor and sally forth into the arena as a gladiator. And guess what? He won every single match. This public display reinforced his image as both invincible and divinely favored in the eyes of the Roman populace. As the year drew to a close, Commodus planned a grandiose inauguration for 193, intending to both serve as a consul and perform as a gladiator on January 1st, once more blurring the lines between his imperial duties and his personal ambitions as an entertainer. However, this plan was cut short by a deadly conspiracy, and it came from within his own inner circle, who were getting a little bit tired of him not fulfilling his emperor-like duties. On the final day of 192, December 31st, Commodus's life came to a dramatic end. After an assassination attempt through poisoning failed, as Commodus managed to vomit up the poison, Marcia, his consort, along with the prefect Latus and chamberlain Eclectus, who discovered their names on a death list prepared by Commodus, resorted to a more, let's call it a direct approach. They enlisted Commodus's wrestling partner, Narcissus, who strangled the emperor in his bath, thus ending his controversial reign. Following his assassination, the Senate wasted no time in condemning Commodus's memory to oblivion, a decision akin to what is called a damnatio memoriae, though not formalized as such. They reinstated the original names of the city of Rome and its institutions, reversing Commodus's egocentric rebrandings. His statues were pulled down and destroyed, and his body was interred in the mausoleum of Hadrian, without the honors typically afforded to Roman emperors. The death of Commodus marked the end of the Nerva Antonine dynasty, leading to the accession of Pertinax. However, his reign was short-lived, and his death initiated the tumultuous Year of the Five Emperors. A few years later, in 195, Emperor Septimius Severus, seeking to align himself with the legacy of Marcus Aurelius, reinstated Commodus's memory, and finally had him deified by the Senate. Before we go, let's discuss a few more of the eccentricities of Commodus. Of course, much of what we know does come from contemporary sources, such as Cassius Dio, who provides a admittedly nuanced portrait of the emperor, describing him as not inherently malevolent, but as excessively naive and easily manipulated due to his simplicity and timidity. This susceptibility made him a target for the influence of corrupt associates, leading him astray from virtue into a life of indulgence and cruelty, a departure that became ingrained over time, hard to break the habit. At least that's Cassius Dio's opinion. It could be right, it could be wrong. Now Commodus's reign marked this sharp departure from the famous, principled, and austere Stoic philosophy that his father Marcus Aurelius had embodied and promoted. The apple really could not have fallen further from the tree, to be honest. Raised in an environment steeped in those Stoic values, Commodus completely discarded these principles upon assuming power, distancing himself from both the policies and advisors of his father's administration. And this rejection also extended to his family, from whom he grew increasingly isolated. And thus his was a rule marred by paranoia and outright vindictiveness, leading to the execution or punishment of those he perceived as threats, or who simply displeased him, even for minor offences. I'll give you an example. An infamous instance of his cruelty occurred at the Roman baths at Termae Taurine, where Commodus ordered an attendant to be thrown into an oven after being upset over the temperature of his bath water. Additionally, members of the prominent Quinctilii family were executed not for their guilt in any conspiracy, but because their wealth and their capabilities posed a threat in Commodus's eyes, and he couldn't have that, couldn't he? Yes, Lucius Aelius Aurelius Commodus. Well, originally born with that name, of course, but he underwent several transformations in his titles throughout his reign, reflecting his evolving self-image and autocratic style. Of course, when his father died in 180, he altered his name to Marcus Aurelius Antoninus Commodus. However, in a bid to reinforce his own unique identity and divine status, he went back to his original name in 191. So it was just a phase. Well, in that same year, Commodus adopted an elaborate series of titles: Lucius Aelius Aurelius Commodus Augustus Hercules Romanus Exploratorius Amazonius Invictus Felix Pius. Well, that is a very, very long name, isn't it? These titles were not just honorary. They were carefully chosen to protect an image of divine authority and superhuman prowess. Now, the title Exuperatorius, it's a mouthful, likening him to Jupiter, suggesting a supremacy, while Amazonius reinforced his self-identification with Hercules, emphasizing his strength and heroic status. He also introduced the titles Pacator Orbis, which means pacifier of the world, and Dominus Noster, our Lord, which were indicative of his perceived role as a global ruler and divine authority. The adoption of Dominus Noster, a title later used by Roman emperors, marked Commodus as a pioneer in imperial titulature, aiming to elevate the emperor's status above mere mortal rulers to that of a universally acknowledged sovereign. The expansion of titles and the renaming of months to align with his names show his efforts to reshape the Roman identity and culture around his persona. Evidence from an inscribed altar in Dura Europos demonstrates how far-reaching these policies were, extending even to remote parts of the empire and affecting both civilian and military realms. Units of the auxiliary military were renamed Commodiana, indicating the depth of his cult of personality and his assertion of personal dominion over all aspects of Roman life. And of course, he took great pride in his physical attributes and abilities, often showcasing them in ways that blurred the lines between imperial dignity and theatrical spectacle. His enthusiasm for presenting himself as a reincarnation of Hercules was more than a mere role-play fascination. He really believed it. It was an integral part of his identity and his rule. As far as he was concerned, he was the guy. He adorned himself with the iconic lion's hide and club attributes of Hercules, reinforcing this connection through public appearances and numerous statues commissioned across the empire to depict him in this godlike form. And his physical prowess was not merely limited to symbolic gestures. He actively participated in gladiatorial combat. The arena, a place traditionally reserved for slaves and free men seeking fame and fortune, but rarely, if ever, for emperors. His appearances were not only about displaying his strength, but were also performances meant to solidify his divine status among the populace. He was known for his unique ability as a left-handed fighter, a trait he took pride in and which set him apart in the eyes of his contemporaries. Cassius Dio, along with the other ancient sources such as Herodian and the scripts of the Historia Augusta, detailed Commodus's feats with almost mythic-like reverence. His skill as an archer was particularly emphasized. He was reputed to be able to decapitate a speeding ostrich with a single arrow and kill leaping panthers in mid-assault. These acts, performed during elaborate games and spectacles, were designed to awe spectators and demonstrate his superiority and courage. His engagement in these violent entertainments was a stark departure from that Stoic philosophy that he was brought up in, a shift that not only reflected in his personal indulgences, but also significantly impacted the imperial image and the administration of the empire. His rule is often remembered not for statesmanship or conquests, but simply for these strange theatrical exploits and the autocratic fervor with which he pursued his own vision of divine kingship. And his passion for gladiatorial combat was more than a mere pastime. It was a complete obsession. It blurred the lines between emperor and entertainer, and more began to shock Roman society. He regularly entered the arena dressed as a secutor, a type of gladiator equipped with a helmet, shield, and a sword, engaging in combat that many Romans deemed beneath the dignity of a man of such position. Herodian and other contemporary sources revealed that such behaviors were seen as disgraceful, particularly for an emperor who was expected to embody the virtues of leadership and martial prowess against legitimate enemies of the state, not fellow entertainers in staged combats. He should have been out there fighting the enemies of Rome, not ostriches and other animals bought in for his own vanity. Well, of course, in the arena, Commodus's combats were carefully orchestrated. his opponents always yielded to him, ensuring that he never lost a single match. Such fights, though non-lethal, were symbolic victories that reinforced his image as invincible, yet they also earned him a reputation for hubris and excess, as he reportedly charged Rome a staggering 1,000,000 sesterces for each appearance, exacerbating the strain on the empire's finances. His bouts against animals were particularly extravagant and gruesome. Cassius Dio records that Commodus killed 100 lions in a single day, showing a lavish, wasteful slaughter that would have, of course, been costly and logistically complex. I mean, it would have taken them a long time to get that many lions, and then their entire supply of lions in a single day, completely killed by our old mate Commodus. Well, more disturbingly, Dio recounts an incident where Commodus decapitated a running ostrich with a specially crafted dart and theatrically threatened the senators by gesturing with the ostrich's bloody head towards them, indicating that they might be next. Well, this act was, of course, intended to intimidate, but it didn't quite have that effect. Reportedly, it was met with concealed laughter rather than fear from the senators, just because of how ridiculous the entire situation was, him holding up the ostrich's head and threatening them with it. Well, his displays extended to fighting and killing multiple large and exotic animals too, such as elephants and even a giraffe at one point, both awe-inspiring and, of course, horrifying to the audience. These events meant to demonstrate his physical dominance and godlike power. Instead, left the audience with a portrait of a ruler that was completely lost in his own delusions of grandeur, increasingly alienated from the traditional roles and responsibilities of a Roman emperor. Well, thank you very much for listening. I already did a video about Commodus, but you know what? I wanted to do another one, because I think he's interesting. So here is your updated Commodus video. Thanks to my top-tier patrons: Britt, Charles, Stark Factory, JC, Jeffrey, Wendy, Tim, James, Erin, Scott, Dark, and Ben. All top people. And I'd like to thank you too for joining me today. And you know that I will be back here tomorrow, same time, same place, right here on YouTube. Have a good rest, everybody. Good night.